Hey everybody, Michael Snyder, Pacific Northwest Weather Watch. Today is February 5th. If you guys are liking these videos, make sure to click like and subscribe if you would for me. So checking out the weather across Pacific Northwest today, you can see the big ridge building out over here. We're also going to talk about a December recap for the Pacific Northwest, and we'll take a look at the extended forecast and some of the ramifications for this ridge coming up for the Pacific Northwest. We'll take a brief look at weather around the country too here. So let's just dive right on in. You can see here the Gulf of Mexico as this Arctic air mass moves over the relatively warm waters here, and it creates this cloud layer here as it condenses this very cold air, and then it brings high pressure into the Gulf of Mexico here too, and it creates this interesting weather phenomenon here. As the high pressure builds up, it pushes through this low-lying gap here through Central America called the Tehuantepec Gap, and so they call them the Tehuantepec winds as they move through here. You can see it's active right now in the visible satellite imagery, and you can see this diagram here kind of showing you how it works. And these winds spread all the way out over the Pacific Ocean here. And taking a look here at, so here we are currently, and as we go into the future there, you can see those winds active right here as those winds are just all northerlies into the Gulf of Mexico here and pushing through that gap. Kind of an interesting feature there. I thought I'd point that out. And looking at the rest of the country, you can see it's pretty quiet around the rest of the country. We're going to take a look here. There's some sneaker wave activity going on the Washington coast, and there's that system that moved through yesterday still creating some snow for the highlands of Montana and some high wind warnings, and some winter weather advisories across Minnesota and portions of North Dakota there. Looking here at Billings, still getting some strong winds out there. You can see 94 and I-90, so heads up if you're traveling eastbound there. And you can see we've got winter weather advisories, mostly for the higher terrain east of Helena there, including Great Falls. So here's what we're talking about for the sneaker wave activity. If you're going out to the coast here, anywhere on Washington or Oregon, actually, even up towards British Columbia, just watch out for these sneaker wave activities. A lot of people get out there on the weekends. And as the weather gets potentially nicer here in the next few days on the coast, this could be a problem. But just a heads up for that. Never turn your back on the ocean. And again, this is through Portland having the same thing. Wave run up higher than normal. Avoid jetties. Avoid logs near waterline on the beaches. Those logs are very heavy. They're waterlogged, and they can easily trap you or pin you or injure you severely with these wave run-ups. So taking a look there, you can see the beach hazard statements, and really quiet. It's going to be pretty quiet around here for a while coming up, but there are things to look at, and there are things to look at in the extended that we'll get to here in a minute. So avalanche danger, you can see mostly I-90 north. There's a considerable avalanche danger as well, so heads up if you're traveling in the backcountry. This is the Northwest Avalanche Center. I highly recommend you look at that if you're going hiking back into the upper terrains here. It's still moderate avalanche danger south of I-90, and heads up Mount Hood area too, and portions of the Olympic Mountains. So high pressure returns. You can see, we're going to potentially get into another foggy scenario here as we were in just over a week ago now. So we'll take a look at that coming up here also with this ridge developing. A little bit of a wind advisory as that frontal system's moving through. The west winds are being brought through this gap here. Not a big deal, but just heads up if you're traveling eastbound on I-90 mainly. And here's out into Montana. You can see the snowfall totals for the higher elevations. And winter weather advisory is in effect. The lower elevations, not expecting much snow at all, generally less than an inch. So here we go into December. This is the kind of a climate summary that the Pendleton National Weather Service office has kindly put out. You can see, even though we had that cool December, you can see actually portions of South Washington and Eastern Oregon were actually a little bit above normal temperatures for December. You can see those Arctic air intrusions kept Montana below, and portions of western Washington, the Cascades, actually below as well, down through portions of the Willamette Valley there. But some areas of western Oregon were actually slightly above average temperatures, and you can see the heat there going down through Wyoming and Idaho and portions of southwestern Montana. So here we go. So percent of normal precipitation. We were looking a little bit better for drought potential in eastern Washington, but now you can see we're already, they don't get much precipitation over there even in the winter, and now they were below average even during December. And now with this huge ridge coming, it could potentially bring drought issues going on into the spring and summer here if we don't start getting this precipitation to return. And even for Western Washington, it was generally, there was a mixed bag there of above and below precipitation values. When we're in this cold north flow, we don't get a lot of precipitation, even though we get snow and it is cold. So, and you can see most of the areas, though, off into the west, Idaho, Montana, did get pretty good precipitation totals, over 150% of normal for a lot of areas. And you can see a lot of Oregon, though, too, below. And, of course, what we talked about for eastern Washington. And this is kind of the 500 millibar mean pattern. You can see we did have an Arctic air intrusion, so it did clip us there pretty good in late December for western Washington. Got down to areas of the Willamette Valley all the way out to the Oregon coast at times. And here is kind of an upper level pattern here that developed. You can see that during that period, you can see the huge ridging over here, the Aleutians, and it let that north flow dive down into us, and that's what gave us our colder weather. And now the problem is this ridge has moved close to us, and that's allowing for the Arctic air intrusions east of the Rockies. And so I've got a video coming up on the MJO that we're going to take a look at that and why these ridges set up in certain positions versus others. And so, yeah, this ridge is over us now and going on into our extended here. So we're looking for signs if this ridge is going to back up here in the future. And there are some signs that it may do that, but we're definitely going through probably a period of about a week where this ridge is going to be pretty close to the Pacific Northwest. So we'll take a look at that here for the extended forecast. Now, taking a look at more of some current weather here. You can see this system as it moves through, it's kind of bringing some strong winds still through Montana, which we looked at, and the wind advisory out there for eastern portions of the Cascades as well. Nothing too extreme. And as we go into Sunday, you can see pretty much light winds, maybe some of the higher terrain through Montana. You see the next frontal system moving through here. And generally gusts maybe in the 20s for some of the Puget Sound areas, nothing too crazy. And as the system moves through again, east portions of the Cascades and up towards British Columbia, getting some winds as that goes through there, and windy again in Montana on into Monday afternoon. But take a look here. You can see this weak frontal system as this one kind of moves out. This is this afternoon here. You can see the precipitation exiting the Montana area, bringing some snow for the upper elevations. And here we go into Sunday afternoon, and here comes Monday's front. You can see just how meager this front is. A little bit of mountain snow, mainly north of I-90. Just, a very meager system. And as we go into, these are snow totals, so you can see what's going on here. There's not much coming. You can see a little bit in the North Cascades, some decent amounts for mountains of British Columbia, so heads up for that, even on Vancouver Island. And this will bring some snowfall through areas of Idaho and Montana, the Rockies, and up towards the Rockies of British Columbia. We'll get some decent amounts of this here, but not much you can see for Washington and Oregon except for the Northern Cascades of Washington. And here we go. This is a Gfs Precipitation Loop. You can see how this ridge is just shunting the storm track and just battering South Alaska and Southeast Alaska with the storm. The storm track is just pointed right at them. And then in the extended, there's some precipitation that returns, but still not heavy amounts at all. And you can see eastern portions of the states where the drought can be really severe, and it was severe last year. This is not good. We need this precipitation to return because we're quickly moving out of, the precipitation values start to drop at this time of the year. Once you get into February and March, we stop getting those heavy atmospheric river events, and precipitation totals generally are not as heavy, and it's harder to make up for drought deficits as we go on. Here is the European as well, showing that ridge, and again, great agreement with that storm track being generally north of Vancouver Island through southeast Alaska to the south coast of Alaska there, and leaving Western Washington really high and dry. A lot of that precipitation you see there falls on the Monday system too, and just very light amounts in the lowlands, and basically nothing for eastern Washington and Oregon through the 10-day period. So just taking a look at the systems as they come through here. Here comes the Monday system right there. I have to point it out. It's so weak there, bringing a little bit of mountain snow to the North Cascades. Here's that big ridge shunting the systems northward into southern Alaska and southeast Alaska there. This powerful ridge out here just stirring. And as I move this into the future, there's the Monday system as we go into the future here a bit. And you can see those systems coming up towards southeast Alaska. You notice the ridge just right on our doorstep here, not allowing anything into our region as we go into the future. And we are almost 200 hours out there, and still a weak system moves over the top of this powerful ridge here in the extended. And we're kind of watching for that. Will this ridge retrograde back to the west and allow some systems to get in here? And usually this time of year, you know, we've got a good southwest flow at times, and we're getting systems that move through there, and that's just not happening this year whatsoever. So maybe this ridge will get out of here in the 10-day period, but right now it's not looking like it. So we're hoping it backs up some so we can get some of these systems over the top of the ridge and maybe help build the snowpack for this upcoming spring and summer. Here's the GFS now. And you can see Monday's system move through there, and that ridge just on our doorstep, keeping us dry as the systems are being shunted northwards. And you go way into the future here in a very weak system. Again, the European is hitting something at that too as it slides across the north, but not much help at all. That's a really weak system as that ridge just remains resilient on into the future. Here we are 300 hours out on the GFS and still with the ridge developed off our coast here. So not good for looking on into the future here for drought conditions, as finally a system breaks it down in the very extended, but this is not reliable at this point for the GFS. So that's what we're looking at. I wish I had more to tell you guys as far as some active weather, but that is about it. And I'll work on this. I've got a convergence zone educational video coming up, and that should be out here in the next week or so, and a Madden-Julian oscillation to try to tie in with our weather pattern that's going on now and try to explain why that ridge is set up over us versus being out further over the Pacific or not at all. And taking a look here, this is the 10-day precipitation anomalies. You can see this is the European model, and extremely dry. You can see well over 2 inches in deficit for much of areas, Vancouver Island south through the lower mainland of British Columbia, all the way down the Willamette Valley, Oregon coast into California. This is not good for spring and summer drought concerns. And you might look at this and think, oh, it might not be that bad in eastern Washington, but they hardly get any precipitation at all. So any kind of deficit is huge for eastern Oregon and eastern Washington as far as drought concerns. So this is very concerning. And you can see southeast Alaska, you know, they're getting the lion's share of this precipitation here coming up in this next 10-day period. So that's what we're looking at now. I'll be doing that MGO video and the convergence zone video here coming up in the next week. So if the weather's quiet, I may skip a day or two here. So so I can work on the video. So, all right, thanks for watching, you guys, and I'll talk to you guys later.